All right. What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? How is it going? I am no one. And in today's video, I wanted to talk to you guys about why I think we are doing such a big combat adjustment and why it's happening right now. Because as you guys know, this last week on the PTR, I've done multiple videos talking about this. This is going to be another video. But on the PTR, they incorporated some TTK and balance changes to gear. And we got to test 2 days on the PTR, and then they introduced it in Alpha 2. And Steven's posted a couple messages on the forums talking about how these are the first adjustments to changes to combat and design for Alpha 2. And it's left a lot of people wondering, why are they doing this now? Why are they making all these big changes? Because a lot of gear has gotten overhauled. A lot of gear has gotten changed. Enchanting has taken a huge knockback. I talked about that in a previous video. I'm not going to rehash that here, but a lot of adjustments have been made to combat. And some people have wondered why. There's been a little bit of an outrage on the forums. Some people wanting to go back to what the lower TTK was. Some people talking about how gear just doesn't have the same impact it used to. Why play a game if you're not going to advance in gear? I have a lot to say about that. I'm going to talk about that on Monday. But overall, people are just wondering, why are we doing this combat change right now? Well, in my opinion, it is April 12th. We have phase 3 starting in May. And from my perspective, talking to people in my community, talking to people on Discord and the forums and on YouTube, a big pain point for a lot of players in Alpha 2 and why a lot of players are not enjoying Alpha 2 right now is because the combat has not been very fun. Currently, the combat is very lopsided in design around AoEs. And if you look at your specific archetypes right now and you look at your specific kits, you probably see different buffs and debuffs that your specific archetype can apply. And I'll be honest, unless you're a ranger with vines and unless you're a mage with shatter and mage ball, nothing else really matters. Like that's just about it. You got bards with shields, providing shields for your DPS. You got vines and you got AoEs, and that's literally what it is. It is, relative to everything that exists in Alpha 2 and Ashes of Creation right now. It is what is valuable and what is useful is currently a fraction of what the overall combat is. And I think that in general is bad design. You look in general chat and you'll see people posting recruitments. You'll see PvP guilds only requesting mages, maybe a few rangers, maybe a few mages. I have a few people in my guild. A fighter in my guild said that he applied to a few other PvP guilds and they said, you need to play a real archetype before you want to join us. and I think in a game where you're going to have 8 archetypes and 64 classes, it's bad game design when players recognize certain archetypes and they go, yeah, that's not valuable in medium and large scale PvP. That is a clear issue that there is no place for them in the current design. And the current design has way too high of damage. And so anybody that wants to play melee, before this week's test, of course, if anybody wants to play melee, you're just signing up to be fodder. You're signing up to die almost immediately. And so a lot of the depth that currently exists in Ashes of Creation doesn't really exist due to the certain parameters that they have. Now, I've talked about this quite a bit. There's a reason I've done multiple videos on this. I've played a lot of MMO PvP in the past, and it's always funny because there's so many different games that have such great single target depth. You have such great interactions with melee and range-based combat. You have different debuffs and buffs that you can apply to yourself or debuff to other people, and you have all these interactions in a single target-based area. Like all this just combat feels really fun, and it feels really good to play. Fighter, although it isn't very useful in medium and large scale PvP, it is still really fun to play because of the different things that it can apply, and none of that really matters right now in Alpha 2. And so in order to see where Ashes of Creation and Intrepid is going, I think it is important to go back and look at what they've said in the past. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a question I was able to ask Steven Sharif in an interview about 5 or 6 months ago, before Alpha 2 came out. Me and Nice Gaming had the privilege of interviewing him, and one of my questions was on specifically this, AoEs versus single target abilities, and I will play it right now. Okay, so I've played games in the past, Steven, where when you're fighting people or monsters in a game, your single target aspects have like a lot of depth, a lot of skill, a lot of replayability. And then sometimes in a patch or overall, all of that is wiped out by 2 to 3 very strong, overpowered AoE skills. And the reason I'm bringing this up is a few months ago, Nice and I had a fun conversation in our Discord talking about the benefits of powerful AoEs, especially combating large-scale groups in PvP and stuff like this. But the overwhelming argument against it is you don't want to make too much of a situation to where 2 to 3 skills and AoE skills completely eliminate that depth of combat. Like they should have a place, but they shouldn't dominate. And so I was just curious if you wanted to maybe go on a rant about your guys' philosophy on like AoE based skills versus single target skills, and kind of hoping what you're looking to accomplish in Ashes of Creation.
Well, I think that this harkens back a little bit to the question you asked about balance. I think that when you think about the components that create an ability, you have things like cooldown, mana consumption, right? And usually those are an adverse relationship with area of effect, total damage output, right? Those things can have inverse effects on each other. So to answer your question, like if we're talking about AoE abilities, generally the paradigm I look towards is AoE abilities are not a sustainable farming approach or grinding approach for as much as individual ability targeted abilities are.
Sure.
Right. So you want to use those in specific situations where you get the highest bang for buck, the highest return on the additional either energy consumption or the cooldown that you're expending as a result of that. Our approach in the class kits. Now, that's not true across the board for all classes. Some classes are going to have a higher disposition of AoE abilities. Some classes are going to be more efficient at using AoE abilities versus single target abilities.
Sure.
Some builds within those classes are also going to have benefits, but this is a give-take choice, right? You're making specific choices when speccing that direction or choosing that particular archetype because you want to play as that type of rotational player. But those things, again, play into the balance approach, which aligns with some rubric that we use internally in order to define what those characteristics should exist at in relationship to other ability types. So without a specific example of how specific AoEs are either problematic, like if we're talking about diminishing returns, should AoEs have an uncapped limit on the number of entities that it affects? Our approach right now is no, they shouldn't be uncapped, that we're going to apply some diminishing return effects on AoEs because we have certain instruments within level design or within encounter design that involve choke points, where we don't just want it to be about who can mage ball a particular location and prevent access as a result of that. Many of us have experienced that in other game designs.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good. So some of the mitigating factors that can be utilized in order to avoid those situations are diminishing returns. Those are some things that we're employing, but also, just the general balance between the skills.
Yeah. The mage ball question that was one of the big points that was brought up because, when you're going to have large scale combat, in a PVX environment, you do need powerful AoEs. You do need powerful skills in order to combat in a certain situation. But sometimes it becomes a situation to where, like you said, if it becomes too powerful, you end up like Henry Ford Model T-ing a situation where you have an assembly line and everybody's like, okay, now hit this skill now, hit this skill now, and it just takes away the combat.
I used to do that all the time. In fact, as a matter of fact, in one of the MMOs that I played, it was a standard operating procedure amongst our raid leaders that compositionally each group would have people placed within the raid UI according to the sequence in which they were to fulfill their rotation of AoE effects. So we would be like party members 1, AoE rotation now. Party members 2, AoE rotation now. We call it off like that because it was just the most optimal, completely non-contended approach towards a particular encounter design. I'm not going to say that we can completely rule that aspect out within Ashes encounter designs. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of class composition, strategy plays that people have unique build types and maybe orchestrate those types of effects.
Sure.
But the idea there is having agency to have multiple answers for situations, not always the same one.
Yes, I agree. And so, guys, what we have here, from Steven's answer, what I glean from Steven's answer is sure, AoE skills have their place, they have their utility, they have their role, and nobody wants to take those away. The issue becomes when that's the only thing. The analogy that I provided, obviously, in the interview was, being a Model T assembly line where each person pushes one individual skill, and that's boring. There's not a lot of depth to that, and so the current iterations and the current changes they're trying to make is to adjust TTK and adjust combat so that other parts of their combat system can shine. And when time to kill is too high, when time to kill is too low and damage is too high to where all you need is AoE and mage balls to kill everything, that becomes the blunt instrument used in every single situation. And you don't have to take my word for it. You can literally see it in every single node siege, node war that exists. Like the best players, the players with the best kill to death ratios are mages and rangers, because they have AoE based skills that do a shit ton of damage. And so when we look at why they're doing what they're doing, well, I just want to say that they want these other kits to shine. They want to bring out the strengths of these other archetypes. Like we're seeing right now, kind of a tank renaissance where all of a sudden tanks are actually tanky again. My fighter friends, they're actually able to stay in and fight versus range players instead of dying in 2 to 3 seconds. Their kits are actually able to be expressed in PvP currently. Now, is this the finalized version? Is this going to be the finalized version? No, absolutely not. Steven said we're going to be doing multiple reworks of combat right now. And so the vision I imagine is, imagine we're sculptors, right? We're going to try to remake Michelangelo's David, and we have just a pillar of marble in front of us. And right now we're doing the rough cuts. We're not finalizing the nose. We're not chiseling out the pecs. We're not working on the lower nether regions, deciding on how big is too big and stuff like that. We're literally rough cutting what the combat is and how it's going to flesh out. And because of that, we're seeing an overhaul in gear. We're seeing an overhaul in enchants, and we're seeing a diminishing returns on our overall physical power rating. And this is going to be the last thing I talk about in this video. But currently, if you guys go back and you watch my video from a few days ago, I said on the PTR, it was roughly 46.6. I was rounding it to 50 fizz power rating in order to get 1 fizz power. And so what this means is when I would put on a piece of gear like this black feather tunic, it's providing 1481 fizz power rating. Well, on the PTR, this 1481 divided by 46.6 meant that it was giving me almost 32 fizz power when I was putting it on. But what they have done is they have put diminishing returns on the current system. And I wanted to kind of show that and highlight it for you here. So what we're going to do, guys, is we are going to strip down naked. Turn your eyes away if this is, not family friendly. Yes, I do work out. Thank you for noticing. But what we have here is we have a level 20 rogue, and currently my base physical power is 41. And if I put this black feather tunic on, by the simple deduction of math, if this worked the same way as it did on PTR, my 31, almost 32 power rating should jump me up to 73-ish fizz power. I should be at 72 or 73. But when I put this piece on, it jumps me to 70.2. So I'm gaining 29.2 fizz power instead of the 32-ish that I'm supposed to be getting. Now keep that number in mind, 29.2. So this is with no other gear on. I'm gaining 29.2 fizz power off of the first piece. Now, if I put the rest of my gear on, different things with different physical power rating, just the best stuff I have available to me at the moment, and we look at this, I have everything on but the chest. Yes, I do work out, thank you. We see I have 191.6. Now, if I add 191.6 with that 29.2, you see that I should have about 220, around there, 220 fizz power. This should jump it up if there's no diminishing returns to about 220, but I only jump up to 205. Now what this means, obviously, is there's diminishing returns. So the more fizz power I stack into my build, if I put fizz power into every single gear piece, I'm going to get less and less individual value out of each individual piece. And what this means is it allows other gear pieces to shine. It allows other set bonuses to shine. So maybe, as an example, I'm fighting and there's just a shit ton of rogues, right? Like I just know that there's a ton of rogues and they're doing a shit ton of physical damage. And right now I have 31.5% mitigation. I have 3575 armor. Well, maybe I want to lose a little bit of fizz power, and I'm going to go from 201.8 currently, 201.8 fizz power here, to I think my strength scroll fell off. That's why it dropped to 192.1. So I lose 9 phys power, which isn't nothing, of course, but now I gain, like 600-ish armor. And so I have 34.4% physical mitigation instead of 31.5. And so maybe this trade-off of roughly 9 phys power for all this extra mitigation is worth it. Now, obviously, on top of this, I have more constitution. I have necrotic mitigation rating. Obviously, rogues do necrotic damage. This may be a piece that I would want to put on. Mentality. Like this may be something that I want to put on that would offset some of the incoming damage I'm taking from those pesky rogues. And so now you're going to see a potential shift to different types of stats. And so a lot of other stats would shine. In the previous phase 1 and phase 2, it was all about stacking strength, baby. That's all you had to do. You stacked, look at this. The Snar's bow necklace. It provided dex and it provided strength. Those are 2 waterfall stats that provided phys power, phys critical power, physical accuracy, and disabled duration and block mitigation. And then dexterity provided attack speed, physical pen, critical chance rating, evasion rating, and you could just stack this, and with the old enchant values, your waterfall stats would apply to all those things. And it was just stacking waterfall stats. Why worry about any one individual stat when you can have everything? Just stack in everything. And so that's what we were doing with our old pieces. Halcynite ring here. It was health, strength, and armor. Waterfall stat. We'll just stack into that, baby. Golden hoop, fizz power with strength. We'll just stack into that. We'll get penetration. We'll get fizz power rating. We'll have all these fun things. Polished tin belt. I've shown this a lot, where it had 4 waterfall stats. And why worry about any one individual thing when we can just have everything? And so going away from just stacking into waterfall stats, now we're looking at different choices. And so one of the examples I was testing yesterday, and in my specific build, is I was testing these bloodied bone rings, and I was like, okay, we're having diminishing returns on our physical power, right? So potentially I may want to stack penetration into my build so that I can get a little bit more damage than just going into straight physical power. Maybe there's a point where I have so much diminishing returns on my physical power that this 610 armor pen is better than fizz power. And so I threw this on, and I'll be honest, guys, it gave me no difference. Like this bloody bone ring for my build and this halcynite ring, we're literally like the exact same damage wise. I don't know if penetration's working right. I don't know if I hit diminishing returns on penetration or anything like that, because I do have quite a bit of penetration in this build, giggity. But overall, like there was no noticeable difference in damage between these two things. And so for me, I was like, okay, well, that was disappointing, but we'll keep testing. And so the question then comes, all right, well, what's better then? Should I keep damage on my rings, or is the diminishing returns so low that it may be better for my build to go with lifesteal, right? Maybe I want to go lifesteal. Maybe this Ruvidium necklace that provides strength and critical chance, maybe I'm getting diminishing returns on the strength value, and it's not as valuable as having evasion on a rogue, just avoiding incoming attacks. So now my physical evasion, if I take this off real quick, I go from 17.5 and now I go up to 23.5. Maybe the small value of losing a few fizz power here is actually worth it for my specific build. Maybe it's worth it to lose 2 to 3 fizz power to gain 6% more evasion. And so the diminishing returns opens up a lot of specific choices for specific archetypes. Now, is it perfect? No, absolutely not. Like I said in my video yesterday, I want a crafting economy to where level 10 epic and legendary materials can make very competitive lower level 20, be competitive with lower level 20 gear. Because if you don't have that, there's no value in going out and getting higher level, higher rarity, lower level materials. It just there's just no value for it at all. And so I think you need to have that sort of value that exists. But that is honing in on David's nose. That is honing in on finalizing, his arms and his pecs and his abs. We're in the rough cut phase. From how I'm viewing it, like we're chopping off the edges. We're trying to have not unbearable top end high damage PvP. We're not trying to have ungodly tanky low end high TTK PvP where nobody dies. They're trying to find the the parameters or the rule sets with which all this will exist. And then they're going to go in there and they're going to fine tooth comb and flesh out the different gear and stuff. And so that's how I see it. That's how I see where we're at right now. And it's very exciting. It's very exciting to see because now we potentially have choices that we didn't have last week. Now, and I'm not saying that it will be the case. I'm just saying that this currently is what it looks like. And so I'm going to end this video here. If you guys have any questions or comments, please write in the comment section below and I will do my best to answer it. As always, guys, thank you for watching. Have a nice day.